The fog rolled low that morning, clinging to the cane fields like breath on glass. At sunrise, the slaves found a figure half buried near the sycamore ditch, neither man nor woman, yet somehow both. The body's eyes were open. Its mouth was sewn shut. The master, Jonathan Wiles, ordered silence. His wife, Miriam, fainted when she saw it. But before anyone could move the corpse, it began to hum, a low, trembling note, like wind through hollow bone. By nightfall, word spread that the creature had been seen walking again, pale under moonlight, moving between the master's quarters and his wife's room. Officially, nothing was recorded. The plantation ledgers for that year are missing, but a surviving journal, sealed in a trunk found during a restoration in 1912, tells another story. We called it mercy, though no mercy lived within it. The master said it was property. The mistress said it was divine. I say it was a mirror, showing each of them the rot they tried to hide. From that moment on, nothing in Wiles' plantation grew right again. The cane turned sour. The well began to taste like rust. And every night, someone swore they could hear that same hum, soft, mournful, and endless, echoing through the fields, and no one knew where the figure called Mercy came from. Some said a trader brought them from Charleston. Others whispered they had simply appeared, barefoot, trembling, with eyes the color of tarnished brass. When asked their name, they spoke none. The overseer gave them the name Mercy, but the slaves called them the Between. Jonathan Wiles, proud heir to 3 generations of planters, saw in Mercy a curiosity. His wife Miriam saw a revelation. Mercy carried both gentleness and strength, a body that seemed carved by indecision, neither one nor the other, an embodiment of a secret the town had no language for. The townsfolk feared what they couldn't name. Church sermons grew feverish. Preacher Langston declared that a creature divided against itself was an omen, a vessel through which old sins might return. Yet Wiles kept Mercy close. By winter, the plantation had changed. Wiles' laughter turned brittle. Miriam's eyes grew hollow. At supper, Mercy stood silently behind them, their presence unsettling, their shadow long. Then one night, thunder split the horizon, and every mirror in the house cracked. The slaves said it was Mercy's doing, that the moment they entered the master's house, the air began to rot. Still, neither Wiles nor Miriam could send them away. They had become dependent, drawn not to Mercy's flesh, but to the reflection of themselves in Mercy's haunted calm that in the months that followed, the plantation became divided by 2 forms of worship. In the chapel, Preacher Langston spoke of punishment, of divine order disrupted by the unnatural. But in the parlor, Miriam held secret gatherings at night, whispering verses not from Scripture, but from the book of Isaiah, twisted, rearranged, and directed toward Mercy. Jonathan mocked her devotion. Yet when he drank too much bourbon, he found himself kneeling before Mercy's door, muttering apologies for things he hadn't done, or perhaps for things he had. Mercy said nothing. They only hummed, low and steady, the sound of something ancient waking beneath the soil. The slaves began to avoid the main house. Chickens were found dead in circles. Lanterns flickered blue. It was said that Mercy walked between both the chapel and the fields at midnight, the only being allowed by both heaven and hell. Jonathan's journals began to blur Scripture with delirium. I see in it a unity I have not known in God. It is both creation and curse, the first and last confession. By spring, a child fell ill, then another. The preacher claimed sin was spreading through the land like mildew on sacred bread. And always, always, came that humming, winding through every room of the house like a sermon without words. In June, Wiles forbade anyone from speaking Mercy's name aloud. He claimed it drew them closer, that words fed something unseen. Miriam defied him. She whispered the name into her mirror before sleep, believing it would reveal truth. Within weeks, all mirrors were veiled in black cloth. Servants said reflections began to move on their own. Some swore Mercy's face appeared where their own should have been. Wiles' temper fractured. He ordered the chapel locked and the slaves forbidden to gather. Yet whispers persisted that Mercy had begun to appear in both places at once, in the house and in the fields, as if the boundary of their body had grown porous. One night, Miriam found her husband standing in the nursery, staring at the cradle of their dead child from years past. He said, "It's singing again." She heard it too, the hum rising from the crib, not mournful now, but calling. When dawn broke, the household found a message carved into the nursery wall. I am the echo of both. Mercy was nowhere to be found, but the humming continued, steady, pulsing, and now, coming from beneath the floorboards. By midsummer, the nearest town, Harrow's Mill, refused to trade with the Wiles family. They said the plantation was unnatural ground. Travelers avoided the road that passed its gate. A meeting was held at the church. Preacher Langston warned that mercy was a vessel born from confusion, a punishment for man's pride. Yet even as he spoke, several parishioners confessed to seeing visions, faces in the baptismal water, shadows lingering behind their pews. Meanwhile, Miriam began sending letters to her sister in Savannah, frantic, trembling words. It listens. It knows when we think of it. It stands between us in every silence. Wiles burned the letters before they were mailed. But one survived, later found inside the preacher's Bible, sealed with a lock of hair that didn't belong to Miriam. Rumor spread that both husband and wife had lost their minds, that mercy had infected their dreams, their faith, their very sense of what was human. One night, 3 slaves tried to flee. They were found 2 miles out, alive but unable to speak. Their tongues bore strange, healed scars, as if something had once been sewn through them. The town began to pray for fire. Autumn came early that year. The air thickened with insects. They gathered on windows, in water, in mouths that tried to scream. The harvest rotted before it could be cut. Wiles stood on his porch, glassy-eyed, watching the cane bend and tremble as if something beneath was breathing. Miriam refused to eat. Mercy returned to the house, pale and silent, with soil under their nails. They did not speak, but when they passed by, the flies fell dead at their feet. That night, Jonathan called the preacher. Together they prayed in the drawing room until midnight. When the clock struck 12, every candle extinguished itself. Langston later wrote, "In the dark, I felt a hand, not his, not hers. It was warm and cold at once. I knew then, what they had summoned was not from the pit below, but from the wound within." By dawn, Langston was gone. His horse was found near the river, riderless, saddle torn. The next Sunday, the church stood empty. Miriam's laughter began to echo through the halls, soft at first, then hysterical. She said mercy had shown her the unity of ruin. And the humming, the endless humming, now came from the walls themselves. When workers repaired the nursery floor, they uncovered something no one would explain. A small wooden box, wrapped in cloth and sealed with wax. Inside, a curl of hair, a tiny jawbone, and a slip of parchment written in Miriam's hand. "Do not bury what was born in between." Wiles demanded it be burned, but when fire touched the cloth, it refused to catch. Mercy appeared in the doorway, eyes blank, hands trembling. They whispered for the first time in months, "You cannot kill balance." After that night, the humming became layered, as if more than one voice now sang through the house. Some swore they heard a child's cry buried beneath the sound. Miriam began to claim that mercy was not a curse but a bridge, that through them, the dead could walk. She started sleeping in the old nursery. Wiles, unable to endure it, moved his bed to the cellar. In the cellar, he found something older, stone foundations predating the house itself, carved with symbols like overlapping circles, 2 made 1. He began to dig. As Wiles dug deeper, he uncovered a flat stone, slick with moisture and carved with names, none belonging to the living. In the center was a hollow shaped like a body curled in sleep. He told no one, but his diary records. "I have seen what balance costs. It is not mercy, it is hunger." At night, the walls shook as if the earth itself tried to breathe. Mercy began to wander barefoot through the halls, humming to the rhythm of the shaking. Miriam's health failed. She claimed Mercy's hum was holding the house together, that if they stopped, everything would collapse. When Wiles confronted them, Mercy simply pointed to the cellar and whispered, "You are already beneath." That night, Wiles dreamed of his own face reflected in Mercy's eyes, except it wasn't his. It was something older, wearing his expression like a mask. By morning, he ordered all the slaves to leave the property. Those who refused were never seen again. The house became still, save for the hum, now joined by faint knocking from beneath the floor. Miriam ceased eating altogether. She wrote only by candlelight, her ink thinned with something red. Her journal, found years later, contained a single phrase repeated dozens of times. Both, both, both. Servants claimed she could be seen walking hand in hand with Mercy through the moonlit halls, both figures silent, their steps in perfect unison. When Wiles confronted her, she said, "Heaven divided us from the start. Mercy only reminded me." The next morning, she was found seated before her mirror, veil removed, glass unbroken, but no reflection stared back. The doctor declared her dead, but her body was warm, and when they tried to move her, she hummed. They buried her beside the sycamore ditch where Mercy had first been found. That night, the hum ceased, for the first time in months, but only until midnight. Then it began again, joined by a second voice. The plantation entered silence. No servants remained. No animals stirred. The cane fields lay untouched, white with frost. Jonathan Wiles lived alone, keeping to the upper floors. He boarded the doors, nailed the windows shut. He claimed to see Miriam in every mirror, her mouth moving without sound. The hum had returned, now faint, now near, always circling. He wrote to a physician in Savannah, "It is not madness, but reflection. The house is full of mirrors now, though none made by hand." Weeks later, neighbors found the letters unsent. They said the sound of a low hymn could be heard from miles away, the melody trembling like something half human, half prayer. Then one night, fire lit the horizon. The Wiles plantation burned. The house collapsed into its own cellar, swallowing itself whole. When dawn came, nothing remained but the stone, and two shadows burned into it, side by side. 60 years later, the land where Wiles Plantation once stood was purchased by a textile company. During excavation for new foundations, workers uncovered a patch of soil that refused to settle. Beneath it, a half-collapsed cellar and a stone slab marked with the faint impression of two bodies. Supervisors called in a surveyor, a man named Elijah Crow. His notes described something unsettling. The air was thick as syrup. The closer we dug, the quieter the birds became. Found what looks like a burial, but the bones have fused in places no human skeleton should. The company halted construction, but Crow returned alone that night, lantern in hand. He later told his wife he heard a sound, not wind, not animal. It was humming, he said, like the land remembered. Days later, Crow vanished. His lantern was found beside the slab. The flame inside it was still burning. When local historians examined the ruins, they found a rusted iron box sealed with wax. Inside lay the lost journal of Reverend Langston, the same preacher who had vanished in 1851. The pages were warped, blackened by age, but fragments were legible. They said the creature was half of both, yet more whole than any of us. In its presence, I felt the split in my own soul, the pull between mercy and judgment. We are all divided. Some are simply born honest about it. Langston's writings grew fevered, descending into diagrams, circles overlapping crosses, names written backward, and one line repeated across the final page. The between shall rise when the world forgets what it means to be one. The scholars dismissed it as madness. Yet the humming returned that same week, heard by the workers in the nearby mill. A year later, in 1913, a mill worker named Sadie Glenn filed a report with the county sheriff. Her words were simple, trembling. "We heard it in the walls, a low song, like someone breathing through the pipes. When we prayed, it got louder." The foreman laughed it off. But 3 days later, Sadie was found sleepwalking near the old plantation well. She kept repeating one phrase. "The between is listening." When the sheriff questioned her, she claimed she'd seen two faces in one reflected in the water, and that they were whispering her name. The report was buried, but the well was sealed, and no one drew water there again. Within months, several workers left Harrow's mill entirely, saying the earth itself seemed to hum beneath their feet. Decades passed. Then came Dr. Emery Caldwell, a historian from Boston obsessed with forgotten Southern folklore. He arrived in Harrow's mill claiming the Wiles legend was a psychological metaphor for generational guilt. He purchased the ruined property, set up camp beside the old foundation, and began recording phonographs of the strange sound that still emanated at night. He believed it to be seismic, vibrations caused by pressure changes in buried aquifers. But his final recording, dated November 3, 1927, said otherwise. The transcript reads, "It's not under the ground anymore. It's in the air. The hum changes when I speak, like it's listening. When I said its name, Mercy, everything stopped. Caldwell's tent was found torn to shreds. His body was never recovered. The recording survived, ending with the same low hum, now accompanied by what sounds like two overlapping heartbeats. A group of anthropology students from Emory University visited the site as part of a rural documentation project. They took photographs of the foundation ruins, ordinary black and white exposures. But when the images developed, one stood apart. In the center of the frame, two faint silhouettes could be seen standing in the shadows of the collapsed cellar, hand in hand. The students dismissed it as a double exposure, until one of them, Lillian Reeve, disappeared 2 weeks later. Her roommate claimed she'd been sleep-talking for days, muttering about joining the song. The photograph was confiscated by university archives. Its catalog tag still reads only, whilst Plantation, -17, restricted. Exactly 100 years after the fire, a small church in Harrow's Mill held a private sermon marking the centennial of repentance. The preacher, Reverend Matheson, claimed to have inherited Langston's Bible. He delivered a sermon on the sin of separation, declaring, "The devil hides not in what divides man and woman, black and white, master and slave, but in the human need to divide them at all." That night, the church's bell rang 12 times, though no one was in the tower. Witnesses reported a sound accompanying the chime, a hum that carried across the entire town. By morning, Reverend Matheson's hair had turned white. He refused to speak again. His final written words, "The Between has learned our hymns." A Harvard research team returned to document the site using ground-penetrating radar. What they found was described in one line of their unpublished report. Below the old cellar lies a void shaped like a body, but larger, stretching 20 feet wide, resonating at 56 hertz. They packed up their equipment that same night. None of them returned to finish the study, but one technician leaked the sonar image to a local newspaper. For weeks afterward, townspeople claimed to feel the vibration when they walked near the ruins, a subtle pulse, like a buried heart still beating. The paper received an anonymous letter soon after. It contained a single phrase written in elegant cursive. Mercy was never human. A man named Robert Tilling, a drifter with a passion for paranormal radio, broke into the ruins with a recorder. He played the tape live on air for a late-night station in Macon. Listeners reported hearing a hum that made their radios vibrate, then a voice, distant and layered, speaking the words, "We shared the same sin, to want what cannot be divided." The station shut down within the year. Tilling vanished soon after, his trailer found empty except for one note written in the dust on his kitchen table. "The song knows our names." The FCC later classified the recording as anomalous interference. No official copy remains, though fragments circulate in local folklore as the Mercy tape. After decades of quiet, construction began again near Harrow's Mill. A new subdivision was planned, Sycamore Estates. Within weeks, residents complained of a faint vibration in their walls. Pets refused to enter basements. Several workers quit after claiming to hear singing under the soil. When investigators tested the ground, the frequency matched the 56 Hz resonance noted in 1973. Then came the rainstorm. Neighbors reported a power outage, and in the dark, every mirror in the development cracked simultaneously. That same night, an emergency operator received a call from an untraceable number. The line carried only a sound, a hum, and beneath it, two voices whispering in unison. "We are still one." Today, the ruins of Wiles Plantation lie fenced off, marked unsafe, do not enter. Yet hikers claim the air grows heavy near the boundary, as if sound itself thickens. Historians dismiss the tale as superstition, a metaphor for sin, repression, and the violence of identity. But some researchers still visit at dusk, laying old photographs on the stone to see what might answer. Those who've listened closely say the hum still rises when the wind dies. It carries no words, only vibration. The same that once haunted Jonathan and Miriam Wiles, the same that echoed through a nation built on division. In the archives of the Savannah Historical Society, one final document remains, and signed, undated, written in looping script. We called it Mercy. It called us both. And in that naming, we became the same. The ink ends abruptly, as though the hand that wrote it had been taken mid-stroke. And somewhere in the stillness of George's fields, when the night is too quiet and the earth begins to tremble, the between still hums.